The Galactic Integration Academy was the largest school in the known universe, and it stood on a moon that orbited a gas giant in the Centauri system. Far from Earth, and far from most places that humans called home, the Academy had been built 300 years ago when the galactic community decided that young people from different species should learn together and grow together and maybe stop trying to kill each other quite so often. It was a nice idea in theory. In practice, the Academy was a place where the strong looked down on the weak, and where species with long histories of conquest still remembered what it felt like to crush their enemies beneath their feet. Mei-Lin Chun knew all of this when she applied to the Academy, and she knew it even better now as she sat in the back row of her combat philosophy class, trying very hard not to be noticed. She was 17 years old, and she was small even by human standards. Standing only 5'2", with a lean build and dark hair that she kept pulled back in a simple ponytail, the Cathari student sitting next to her was 9 feet tall and covered in a crystalline exoskeleton that could stop bullets. The Vex lore student in front of her had 4 arms and predator eyes that tracked movement with terrifying precision. And standing at the front of the classroom was Warlord Krathvox of the Dominari, a species that had once conquered 17 star systems before the Galactic Concord had forcibly stopped them 2,000 years ago. Krathvox was 8 feet tall, and his gray skin was covered in ritual scars that told the story of his warrior lineage going back generations. His 4 eyes burned with barely contained contempt as he looked at his students, and Mei-Lin could tell that he hated everything about this peaceful modern era. He hated that his people had been tamed. He hated that young Dominari now studied diplomacy instead of warfare. And most of all, he hated the soft, weak creatures that filled his classroom. Creatures who had never known real combat, and probably never would combat. Krathvox growled as he paced before the class. "Is the only truth in this universe." His voice was deep and rough like stones grinding together. "The Concord has made you weak, and it has made you believe that diplomacy and trade are substitutes for strength." He paused, and his 4 eyes swept across the room. "But I remember what my ancestors knew, and my people remember, and today I offer you a gift." He smiled. Then, and his teeth had been filed to sharp points in the traditional Dominari fashion. "A challenge," he said. "Any student in this room may face one of my personal guard in ritual combat, and the fight will follow Academy rules, which means non-lethal contact only." He spread his massive arms wide. "Defeat my guard, and you earn an automatic pass for my entire course, and you never have to listen to me speak again." Some students laughed nervously at that. "But if you fail," Krathvox continued, and his smile grew wider, "then you learn what your ancestors knew. That weakness has consequences, and that pain is an excellent teacher." The classroom went very quiet. Everyone knew about Krathvox's personal guard because they were legendary throughout the Academy. These were Dominari warriors who had trained since birth in the ancient combat traditions, and even under non-lethal rules, they had sent students to the medical bay for weeks at a time. A Cathari student had challenged one of them last semester and had spent a month having his shattered exoskeleton regrown piece by piece. No one wanted to experience that, no volunteers, Krathvox said, and he sounded disappointed but also amused. "How very predictable. How very sad." He clasped his hands behind his back. "Then I suppose I will have to choose someone myself, and I think I will choose. I volunteer." The words were quiet, but they cut through the silence like a blade. Every head in the classroom turned toward the back row, where Mei-Lin Chun was rising to her feet. Her face was calm, and her voice had been steady, and she looked at Warlord Krathvox without any fear in her eyes. For a moment no one moved. Then Krathvox laughed. It was a deep booming sound that seemed to shake the walls, and he laughed so hard that tears formed in 2 of his 4 eyes. "The human," he said between laughs. "The human volunteers." He walked toward her, and each step made the floor vibrate. Little creature, he said as he loomed over her. Do you understand what you are agreeing to? Do you understand what my guards will do to you? Mei Lin had to crane her neck to look up at him, but she did not step back. I understand, she said. My guards have broken Kethari warriors, Krathvox said, and he was no longer laughing. They have shattered bones that were harder than steel, and they have defeated opponents 3 times your size. I understand, Mei Lin said again. You are small and you are fragile, and you come from a species that the galaxy considers a charity case. A primitive people from a dangerous world who somehow stumbled into space travel through sheer luck. I understand all of that, Mei Lin said, and I still volunteer, but I have one request. Krathvox tilted his massive head. A request, he said, and there was curiosity in his voice now. Speak it then, little human. I want your best fighter. The words hung in the air. Krathvox stared at her, and for the first time since Mei Lin had entered his classroom, she saw something other than contempt in his eyes. She saw surprise. You want my best? He said slowly, yes. You want Torvin. The classroom erupted in whispers because everyone knew that name. Torvin, the unbroken Torvin, who had won 47 consecutive victories in the Academy combat tournaments. Torvin, who stood 3 meters tall and weighed more than a ground transport and had perfected every fighting technique his people had ever developed. If Torvin is your best, Mei Lin said, then yes, I want Torvin. Krathvox leaned down until his face was only inches from hers, and his breath was hot and smelled like copper. Why? He asked. Why would you ask for this? Mei Lin met his gaze, and she did not blink, and she did not look away. Because I'm only going to do this once, she said, and I want it to matter. Krathvox studied her for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression. Something that might have been the first tiny seed of respect. Very well, he said as he straightened up. You will have your fight with Torvin, and the whole academy will watch. And when he breaks you, I hope you remember that you asked for this. Mei Lin nodded once. I will remember, she said, and somewhere deep in her eyes there was something that Krathvox did not recognize. Something patient and calm and utterly without fear. It made him uncomfortable in a way he could not explain, but he pushed that feeling aside, because she was just a human, after all. Just a small, fragile creature from a death world that should have killed her species long ago. What could she possibly do against the greatest warrior his people had ever produced? He would find out soon enough. They all would. News traveled fast through the Galactic Integration Academy, and within 1 hour, every student and teacher and administrator knew what had happened. A human had challenged Torvin the Unbroken. A small human girl who stood barely 5 feet tall had looked at Warlord Krathvox and asked for his greatest warrior most. People thought it was a joke at first, but when they learned it was real, they came running to the combat arena to watch. The arena was a massive circular space at the heart of the academy, with seating for 10,000 spectators arranged in rising tiers around a central fighting platform. Today, every seat was filled, and people were standing in the aisles and crowding the doorways. Everyone wanted to see what would happen. Everyone wanted to watch the human get destroyed in the preparation chamber beneath the arena. Mei Lin was stretching in silence. She had removed her academy uniform and wore only simple exercise clothes. A gray shirt and loose pants and no shoes. The academy proctor assigned to oversee the fight was a Moravan, a species that communicated through the bioluminescent colors that rippled across their fluid bodies. Right now those colors were flickering with distress. You must reconsider, the proctor said for the 4th time. You must at least wear protective equipment. Mei Lin touched her toes and held the stretch. No thank you. Torvin has hospitalized 17 opponents this semester alone, and he has broken bones and ruptured organs. In one time, he hit a Kethari so hard that the impact shattered their exoskeleton into 100 pieces. I heard about that. Then you understand why you need armor, the proctor said, and their colors were almost entirely red now with alarm. "You need padding at minimum, and a helmet would be wise, and perhaps some kind of equipment would slow me down." The proctor stopped talking because they did not know how to respond to that. Maylin finished her stretches and stood up straight and rolled her shoulders once. She looked calm, and her breathing was slow and steady, and there was no tension visible anywhere in her body. If the proctor had not known better, they would have thought she was preparing for a gentle walk, instead of a fight against the most dangerous student warrior in the academy. "The arena is ready," a voice announced through the speaker system. "The challenger may enter." Maylin walked toward the door. "Wait," the proctor said. "Do you have any strategy at all? Do you have any plan for how you will fight him?" Maylin paused at the door and looked back. "Yes," she said simply. Then she walked out into the arena. The noise hit her like a wave as 10,000 voices shouted and screamed and laughed. Most of them were cheering for Tov. Many of them were laughing at Hirsch. She ignored all of it and walked toward the center of the fighting platform where her opponent was waiting. Tervan the Unbroken was everything the stories had promised and more. He stood 3 meters tall, which meant he towered over Maylin by more than twice her height. His gray skin was stretched tight over muscles that bulged like boulders beneath the surfaces. Arms were thick as tree trunks, and his hands were large enough to wrap completely around her entire body. He wore traditional Dominari fighting wraps around his hands and feet and nothing else. His body was covered in the same ritual scars as his master Krathvox, and each scar represented a victory. And there were so many scars that they overlapped and crisscrossed until his skin looked like a map of conquest. Looked at Maylin as she approached, and he snorted with contempt. "This is the challenger," he said, and his voice was even deeper than Krathvox's voice. "This is what the human species sends against me." He turned to face the crowd. "I have crushed insects larger than this creature, and I have broken warriors who could have torn this little thing apart with their bare hands." The crowd roared with approval. Maylin said nothing. She just kept walking toward him with slow, steady steps, and her arms hung loose at her sides, and her face showed no expression at all. Tervan turned back to look at her, and something flickered in his eyes. He was a warrior who had trained his entire life, and his instincts were sharp as blades, and those instincts were telling him something strange. They were telling him that something about the way this human moved was wrong. She walked like water flowing downhill, smooth and natural and without any wasted motion. She walked like smoke drifting through the air, impossible to grab and impossible to hold. She walked like something that had learned long ago that the difference between stillness and motion was just a matter of perspective, but that was ridiculous because she was just a human, just a fragile little creature from a backwater planet. Irvin pushed his instincts aside and raised his fists. The proctor floated to the edge of the platform. "This match will follow Academy non-lethal combat rules," the proctor announced, and their voice echoed through the arena. "The fight ends when one participant surrenders or is rendered unable to continue. Are both fighters ready?" "Ready," Torvin growled. "Ready," Maylin said quietly. "Then begin." Torvin lunged forward. He was fast, and everyone in the arena gasped because they had never seen something so large move so quickly. His fist shot toward Maylin's head like a missile, and it should have been impossible to dodge because there was not enough time and there was not enough space. But Maylin was not there anymore. She had shifted to the side at the last possible moment, and the movement was so small and so precise that it looked like she had barely moved at all. Tarvin's fist passed through empty air. He spun and struck again with his other hand. Maylin slipped past it like she knew it was coming before it came. He kicked at her legs, and she stepped over the kick without even looking down. He threw a combination of punches so fast that his arms blurred, and Maylin wove between them like she was dancing to music only she could hear it. Crowd went silent. Irvin attacked again and again, and his strikes were powerful enough to break stone and fast. enough to catch almost any opponent in the galaxy, but he could not touch her. Mei Lin flowed around every attack and through every combination, and she did it without retreating and without breaking. Eye contact, her eyes stayed locked on his the entire time, and there was something in those eyes that made his warrior instincts scream warnings, but Torvin's pride was louder than his instincts. "Stand still," he roared. "Fight me like a warrior." Mei Lin tilted her head slightly. "I am fighting you," she said, and her voice was soft and calm, and her breathing had not changed at all. "You just have not realized it yet." Torvin screamed in frustration and launched his most devastating attack. Up in the viewing gallery above the arena, Warlord Krathvox sat in a special seat reserved for high-ranking faculty members. He had come to watch his greatest warrior destroy a foolish human girl. He had expected the fight to last maybe 30 seconds, but now 5 minutes had passed, and Torvin had not landed a single blow. Krathvox leaned forward in his seat, and his 4 eyes were fixed on the fighting platform below. "Something is wrong," he muttered. The Cathari administrator sitting beside him clicked in confusion. "What do you mean?" the administrator asked. "Your champion is clearly dominating the fight. The human has not even attempted to strike back. That is exactly what is wrong," Krathvox said, and his voice was troubled. "She has not tried to attack because she does not need to. I do not understand. She is not running from him," Krathvox explained, and he gripped the railing in front of him so hard that the metal bent under his fingers. "She is studying him." Down in the arena, the fight continued. Torvin was attacking with everything he had, and his strikes were still devastatingly fast and incredibly powerful. But there was a difference now that a trained eye could see. He was beginning to tire. Not much, because Dominari endurance was legendary throughout the galaxy, but there was a slight lag in his movements now, and his recovery time between attacks was a fraction of a second longer, and his breathing was just a little bit heavier. Mei Lin noticed all of these things because she had been watching for them. She had been waiting for them. She slipped past another punch and spoke for the first time since the fight had really begun. "Do you know what a death world is?" Torvin snarled and swung at her head. She ducked under the blow easily. "It is what the Galactic Concord calls planets where the native life evolved under extreme conditions," she continued. "Planets with high gravity and toxic atmospheres and predators on every continent." Torvin threw a kick that could have knocked down a wall. Mei Lin stepped around it. "Earth is classified as a Category 9 death world," she said. "That is the 3rd highest rating possible. Only 2 classification levels above planets that are considered completely uninhabitable." "I do not care about your planet," Torvin growled. "You should." She avoided another combination of strikes and kept talking in that same calm, steady voice. "Your people conquered 17 star systems before the Concord stopped you, and that is impressive. That is truly impressive." She moved past him like flowing water. "But your people evolved on a garden world with optimal gravity and stable climate and plentiful food. Your ancestors were the apex predators of your planet from the moment they achieved intelligence." Torvin's breathing was getting heavier now, and sweat was beginning to form on his gray skin. "My ancestors were not apex predators," Mei Lin said. "My ancestors were prey." She dodged 3 more strikes without any apparent effort. "For millions of years, humans were hunted by everything on our planet. We were hunted by big cats with claws and teeth that could tear us apart in seconds. We were hunted by wolves that worked together in packs. We were hunted by bears that weighed 10 times what we weighed." Torvin was gasping now, and his attacks were noticeably slower. "We were hunted by crocodiles that waited in rivers for us to come drink water. We were hunted by snakes that poisoned us and insects that carried diseases. We were hunted by our own planet as earthquakes shook the ground and volcanoes burned our homes, and ice ages froze everything we knew. Mei Lin had not thrown a single punch, and she had not broken a sweat, and her voice remained perfectly calm. Every other intelligent species in the galaxy looks at Earth and looks at our fossil record and says that humans should have died. They say that we should have gone extinct 100 times over because our planet was trying so hard to kill us. She ducked under another desperate swing, but we did not die. Torvin stumbled and had to catch himself. We learned and we adapted, and we became something that our planet had never seen before. His legs were shaking now. Do you know what persistence hunting is? Torvin could not answer because he was using all of his energy just to keep fighting. It is the technique that made humans the dominant species on our world. Mei Lin explained. It is very simple. We would find an animal that was faster than us and stronger than us, and instead of trying to catch it, in a single burst of speed, we would follow it. She sidestepped another weak punch. We would follow it for hours, and when it ran away, we would keep following, and when it tried to hide, we would find it and keep following, and when it tried to rest, we would not let it rest. Torvin fell to one knee. We would follow it until it collapsed from exhaustion, because humans have the greatest endurance of any land predator that ever evolved on Earth. We cannot run fast, but we can run forever. She looked down at him. That is what I have been doing to you. Torvin looked up at her, and there was something new in his eyes. Now there was fear. I have been dodging your attacks for 15 minutes now, Mei Lin said, and I could keep doing this for hours. My body was built for exactly this kind of sustained effort because my ancestors survived by doing exactly this kind of thing. She tilted her head. Can you say the same? Torvin tried to stand, but his legs would not cooperate. Your people evolved to fight in short bursts of overwhelming violence. Mei Lin continued. You are strong and you are fast, but you are not efficient. Every attack you throw costs you energy, and you have been throwing attacks at maximum power for 15 minutes straight. She crouched down so she was at eye level with him. I have been spending almost no energy at all because I was not fighting you. I was just waiting for you to fight yourself. The arena was completely silent now. 10,000 spectators sat in stunned disbelief as they watched the greatest Dominari warrior of his generation kneeling before a small human girl. This is what it means to come from a death world, Mei Lin said softly. This is what humans learned during the millions of years we spent being hunted by everything. She stood up. We learned patience, and we learned endurance, and we learned that the most dangerous predator is not the one that strikes the hardest. Her eyes met his. It is the one that never stops coming. The arena had become so quiet that Mei Lin could hear her own heartbeat. 10,000 spectators from dozens of different species sat frozen in their seats and stared at the scene below. This was not what any of them had expected. This was not what any of them had ever seen before. Torvin the Unbroken was on his knees in the center of the fighting platform, and his massive chest was heaving with exhaustion. Sweat poured down his gray skin in rivers, and his arms hung limp at his sides. He had not been struck, and he had not been thrown, and he had not been hurt in any traditional sense. He had simply been made to fight until he could not fight anymore, and the human girl who had done this to him was standing in front of him without a single mark on her body and without a single drop of sweat on her face. She was not even breathing hard. You could surrender, Mei Lin said, and her voice was gentle now. There is no shame in it. You fought as hard as anyone could fight. Torvin's pride flared one more time. Was a Dominari warrior, and his people did not surrender, and his ancestors would curse his name. For 10,000 years, if he gave up now, he forced himself back to his feet on legs that trembled like leaves in a storm. He drew back his fist one more time. Mei Lin watched him with something that might have been respect. Then she moved. It was the first offensive action she had taken in the entire fight, and it happened so fast that most of the spectators did not even see it. 1 Moment she was standing still with her arms at her sides. The next moment she was past Torvin, and he was falling. She had struck him exactly once. Her hand had moved in a blur and touched a specific point on his neck. A place where the Dominari nervous system was vulnerable in a way that the Dominari themselves did not know a Budervan. Hit the ground and did not get up. The proctor rushed onto the platform with medical scanners, and the Moravan's colors were flickering wildly with confusion and alarm. "He is unconscious," the proctor announced after a moment. "Not injured, just unconscious. His vital signs are stable." The proctor looked up at Mei Lin. "How did you know where to strike him? How did you know that spot would work? Humans have been studying anatomy for 10,000 years. Mei Lin said. "We started by studying ourselves because we needed to know how to heal each other after the predators got done with us." She looked down at Torvin's unconscious form. "Then we started studying everything else." She raised her eyes to the viewing gallery where Warlord Krathvox was sitting. "We learned the bodies of every animal on our planet because knowledge was the only advantage we had. We could not outrun the predators, and we could not overpower them, so we had to outsmart them." Her voice carried clearly through the silent arena. "When we joined the galactic community, we kept learning. We studied every species we encountered, because that is what humans do. We study and we learn, and we remember." Krathvox rose slowly to his feet. His 4 eyes were very wide, and his scarred face showed an expression that none of his students had ever seen on him before. He looked shaken. "Show me," he said, and his voice echoed through the arena. "Show me what you really are." Mei Lin tilted her head. "Are you sure you want to know? I need to understand." Krathvox said, "My people need to understand. What are humans really?" Mei Lin was quiet for a moment. The entire arena waited. Then she reached up and pulled the collar of her shirt aside to reveal her shoulder. There was a scar there. It was old and faded but unmistakable. 4 parallel lines that curved across her skin like claw marks. "When I was 7 years old, a tiger attacked my village," she said. The word tiger did not translate well, but everyone understood that she meant a predator. It came out of the forest in the middle of the day, and it killed 2 people before anyone could respond. A tiger is a big cat with claws like knives and teeth that can crush bone, and this one weighed 300 kilograms. She traced the scar with her finger. "My grandfather put himself between the tiger and the children because that is what humans do. We protect each other even when protection means death." Her voice remained steady. "The tiger tried to get past him, and its claws caught me across the shoulder as I grabbed my grandfather and dragged him to safety. He lost his arm in that fight." She let her collar fall back into place. "The tiger died." A whisper ran through the crowd. "My grandfather killed it with a knife and his bare hands, while his arm hung useless at his side, because he would not let it hurt any more children." She looked at Krathvox. "That is what humans are. We are the species that fights tigers with our bare hands to protect our families. We are the species that crossed oceans in wooden boats just to see what was on the other side." Her voice grew stronger. "We are the species that split the atom and walked on our moon and refused to stay dead, no matter what our planet threw at us." She spread her hands. "We are not conquerors, and we do not want to be. We have seen what conquest does, because we did it to ourselves often enough. We know how much pain and suffering comes from trying to dominate others." She lowered her hands. "But if you push us, and if you threaten what we love, then you should know something important." The arena was completely silent. "We have been fighting for survival since before your species existed, and we have never stopped learning how to be better at it." She paused. "Every generation of humans has faced something that should have destroyed us, and every generation has found a way to survive and adapt and grow stronger." Her eyes swept across the crowd. "We survived ice ages and plagues and predators and famines. We survived wars that killed millions of our own people, and we survived weapons that could have destroyed our entire world." She looked back at Krathvox. And we are still here." The warlord stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly he bowed his head. It was a gesture of respect that no one in the arena had ever seen him make before. "I understand now," he said quietly. "I think I finally understand." Mei Lin nodded once. "Good," she said. "Then maybe we can learn from each other." The story spread through the galaxy like fire spreading through dry grass. It started at the academy, where students told other students what they had seen. And those students told their families, and their families told their friends, and their friends told everyone they knew. Within a week, everyone at the academy was talking about the human girl who had defeated Torvin the Unbroken without throwing a punch. Within a month, the story had reached the nearest trading stations where merchants carried it to other systems and other worlds. Within a year, the story had become something more than just a story. It had become a warning. The details changed as the story traveled, because that is what happens to stories. Some versions said Mei Lin had fought for hours, and some versions said she had beaten a dozen warriors one after another. Some versions made her taller, and some versions made her younger, and some versions added dramatic speeches that she had never actually given. But the core of the story always stayed the same. A small human girl had challenged the greatest warrior of a conquered species, and she had won by doing nothing but waiting. She had shown the galaxy what it meant to come from a death world. She had shown them what humans really were, and everywhere the story spread, people started to look at humans differently. Before the fight, humans had been seen as a charity case species, a primitive people from a dangerous planet who had stumbled into space travel through luck more than skill. The galactic community had treated them with a mixture of pity and contempt, allowing them to join the Concord but never truly respecting them. After the fight, everything changed. Other species started to wonder what else they did not know about humans. They started to research Earth, and what they found disturbed them deeply. They learned about the predators that humans had faced. The big cats and wolves and bears and crocodiles that had hunted humanity for millions of years. They learned about the diseases that had killed billions of humans throughout history, plagues that had wiped out entire civilizations only for humans to rebuild and keep going. They learned about the wars that humans had fought against each other, conflicts so brutal and so destructive that they made Dominari conquests look gentle by comparison. And they learned about the weapons that humans had created, bombs that could level cities and poisons that could kill millions, and machines designed for no purpose but destruction. The galaxy looked at this information and felt something unfamiliar. The galaxy felt afraid, not because humans were aggressive or threatening, but because humans had survived all of that and kept going, because humans had faced extinction over and over again and had refused to die, because the same species that had created weapons of mass destruction had also created art and music and medicine, and had chosen to reach for the stars instead of burning themselves. Out-humans were not just survivors. They were something the galaxy had never encountered before. They were a species that had been forged in the fire of their own world and had come out stronger on the other side. Back at the academy, things changed. As well, human students were no longer dismissed or ignored or looked down upon. They were watched with a new kind of attention. Not quite fear, but something close to it. Other species started approaching them with questions. How did your ancestors hunt? What predators did you evolve alongside? How many of your kind died to teach your species these lessons? The answers were always horrifying and fascinating at the same time. Warlord Krathvox changed too. He sought out Mei Lin after class one day about a month after the fight, and his proud bearing seemed somehow diminished. I have been teaching combat philosophy for 60 years, he said, and I thought I understood war. I thought I understood what strength really meant. He shook his massive gray head. I was wrong. Mei Lin looked up at him and waited for him to continue. I was teaching only half of the lesson, he said. I was teaching about power and conquest and domination, but I was missing the most important part. What part is that? Krathvox met her eyes. The part about why we fight in the first place. He paused. You did not fight Torvin to prove that you were stronger. You did not fight him to show off or to humiliate him. No, Maylin agreed. I did not. Then why did you do it? Maylin was quiet for a moment. Because your students needed to learn that strength is not the same as power, she said finally. Because your people needed to see that the galaxy is full of creatures who are dangerous in ways they never imagined. She smiled slightly. And because I wanted them to understand that humans are not their enemies, but we are also not their victims. Krathvox nodded slowly. My grandfather used to say something. Maylin continued. He said that the best fight is the one you never have to have. He said that true strength is knowing when to fight and when to walk away. A wise man. He was, Maylin said, and there was love in her voice. He also said that the second best fight is the one you end quickly. She looked up at Krathvox. I think we could teach that together if you wanted. I think your students could benefit from learning both halves of the lesson. Krathvox considered this for a long moment. Then he extended his massive hand toward her. I would be honored, he said. Maylin took his hand and shook it, and his grip was much gentler than it needed to be. Then let us begin, she said. And they did. In the years that followed, the story continued to spread and change and grow. Historians would eventually write about the moment when humanity's reputation in the galaxy shifted forever. They would not point to a great battle, or a historic treaty, or a major political event. They would point to a single classroom challenge on an ordinary day at an unremarkable school. They would point to a small human girl who had asked for the best fighter they had, not because she wanted to prove that humans were superior, not because she wanted to conquer or dominate or destroy, but because she wanted the galaxy to understand something important. Humanity had walked through fire to reach the stars. That fire had forged them into something new, something patient and adaptable and endlessly determined, something that would protect the weak and stand against tyrants and offer friendship to anyone wise enough to accept it. That was the human way. That was what the galaxy would remember. And in the end, that memory would matter more than any weapon or any army or any empire. Because the most powerful force in the universe is not destruction. It is the will to survive and the choice to be kind. And humans had both in abundance.